Hello and welcome back, everyone. This is it. We are into the finals here in Madison, the NRG Championship Series. Corbin Hostler, Devin Doomwake O'Donnell coming to you. We have witnessed some amazing magic over the weekend. We've also witnessed some very long turns of Nadu over the weekend. We've had a little bit of all of it for you. And it all comes down to this, the last match of the weekend, the finals of our tournament. And these players, we want to remind you what they are playing for. Not only are they playing for a bunch of money, there are invites on the line. These players have earned RC invites as a result of their finishes. And now there are additional invites that they are playing for. Devin, what is the big prize that everyone at these events, when you show up to an NRG series event coming near you, is looking for? What are we trying to do here?
I mean, they're trying to qualify for champs. I mean, that is the end goal here. At the end of the year, we will have 24 of the best players over the course of the entire season. As you see Steven Dykman on your screen, last year's $35,000 prize pool on the line. And you see Nikachu and Dom Harvey are also qualified for our end of year championships already. And yeah, I mean, this is really the culmination of the entire season, the best of the best. And, as far as you speaking of, if you would like to come out to one of these events and perhaps trying to qualify for yourself, we got a couple of events coming up here. So we have the next one, I believe, is going to be in Louisville. That is September 14th and the 15th, not too far away. It's going to be a 10K Modern Showdown on Saturday, followed by a 5K Standard Trial on Sunday. And then a few weeks after that, towards the beginning of November, we're going to be heading to Indianapolis. That is November 2nd. That is going to be a 10K Modern Showdown on Saturday, followed up by a 5K Pioneer Showdown on Sunday. And as you mentioned, a lot of these events are going to be towards the end of the season. These are our last two events of the year, and that is going to determine those last spots for the champs.
That's right. We've got most of the field, or at least maybe some of the field for the champs filled out. More of it will be filled out by tonight, but there are spots remaining. And of course, you don't just have to win a showdown, although that's an easy way to get there. That'll get you there directly. You can earn points over the course of the season, right? And you can do that not just for top eights or winning. You can do that for what? Top 16, top 32s. The point is, if you make it out to an NRG series event and you play well and you improve, there is something for you to earn, something for you to gain. And that's what makes the entire concept of the series building up towards that championship at the end so exciting. And of course, the teams that we're about to witness in the finals are trying to get there directly. So, with that said, what are we watching? I'll tell you where we're starting, and that is with the teams of Daniel Weiser, Andrew Elgboen, and Matthias Hunt, who advanced through, and we have them going up against Borgamenki, Desselberger, and Bolger, who we've got to watch throughout this top eight. So that is your players. The matchups, I'll tell you where we're starting. We're going to start in Modern. The reason, I know you know what we're talking about, it's Nadu. But listen, it's 7:30 p.m. where I live here on a Sunday night. Some of you might be watching this on YouTube in the future, might be watching the VOD, in which case the card Nadu Winged Wisdom might or might not actually be legal where you are. But where we stand right now, it is perhaps for the last time. People have called it the swan song of the bird. And we want to be clear eyed about that fact and say that we're going into the final match of the weekend here. And we're going to see Jeskai Control versus Bant Nadu in the Modern seat. Reminder, this is Team Trios. We'll be showing you both Standard and Legacy, but we want to get down there for what could be the final appearance of the bird in Modern. So that's what we have on tap for our finals. Doomwake.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of been talking about this the whole weekend. This is really the Nadu menace is all over the place, obviously. And the question that we've been asking the entire weekend is there a deck that can possibly dethrone it? And now, to his credit, Garrick Alford has done a fantastic job against Nadu all weekend. We saw Garrick lose in the finals of the showdown yesterday to Nadu, but
Mhm.
was 6-2 on the day across the standings against Nadu itself. And we just saw it in the last round. Nadu, well, lost to Jeskai Control, Nadu in the hands of Dom Harvey. So that is where we want to start here. And as you mentioned, this might be the last time we see it on camera. So we want to give it a proper send off. And we'll have to see if this Jeskai Control deck can take down Nadu once again. I mean, as far as the matchup is concerned, if you look at the Jeskai deck, it does kind of look like it's reasonably set up. The 4 Wrath of the Skies in the main deck, a bunch of spot removal, solitudes. So if anything has a chance to do it, it's got to be this Jeskai deck, right?
That's the right way to look at it. And look, I'll be honest, I don't think Garrett Alford's record against it yesterday was an anomaly. The problem, of course, for any deck that you build to beat Nadu is that there are, in fact, other decks in the format that are not Nadu. And sometimes those are the energy, as you put it, zoo decks, right? With a Johnny that can just present an entirely different game plan that you have to interact with. And that is part of the problem in any format where you see a deck take over. The way Nadu has is that even if you can beat that deck, if you can't beat anything else, then it doesn't matter. And going back to our modern open yesterday, we know that Nadu, while obviously the most popular deck and the deck we saw make up half of our top 8, it was about 20% of the field. That means 80% of the field chose not to bring it. And as you get deeper into a tournament, obviously you expect to see it. But the point is you have to be prepared for everything. And sometimes that means something like Nadu can still dominate. So I don't know if we'll get a chance to look at the deck lists here. If we will, we maybe take a final look here at them before we hop in. There is Charles Dusterberg's Jeskai Control. You mentioned it being set up to take down Nadu. We see Dress Down as a really fun answer for me, but Wrath of the Skies has been the card we watched in the hands of Garrick that even when you're just firing it off early on turn 2 to try to get just a little bit of value, it's been the thing that it ties it all together and starts to strand cards like Chords of Calling in the Nadu player's hand.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Dress Down as a good point because we the card Nadu is designed in such a way that it is sort of not the exchanges that it makes on the battlefield. The Nadu player is most of the time going to be up in those exchanges. The one instance of where that doesn't necessarily materialize is in the form of Dress Down, where you play Dress Down, replaces itself on the enter the battlefield, so you're not down a
Mhm.
card off of the Dress Down, and then you are able to trade 1 for 1 with something like Galvanic Discharge on the Nadu. So it
Right.
kind of gives you this, interesting way to sort of sidestep the ability. On top of the fact that even if you don't have the removal spell, say that Nadu player goes for Nadu with a Shuko in play, you can play Dress Down in response, even if you have nothing left over, to at least buy you that 1 turn.
And Dress Down is a really good example of a card that it has its uses against Nadu. You just illustrated them. But if you draw it against Boros Energy, it's not the worst. As you mentioned, it replaces itself. It's not a card you necessarily want in various matchups, but at least it does something and it cycles and it does all of these little bits of something that make it work, right? And it makes the deck maybe function at a higher level than something that is just built specifically to prey on Nadu might. And that's why you see players like Charles go for Jeskai control. And that's why, even though this is, you see a heavy focus on energy, the control avenue has been what players historically go to beat combo decks like Nadu. The problem, as you illustrate, is that Nadu's abilities make it so hard to interact with it via normal removal, in addition to the fact that when it does its thing, it literally just ends the game and wins. That it makes it really difficult for a lot of decks to interact with it all. But Dress Down gives it a shot. Wrath of Skies gives you a chance to keep the board clear. All the counter spells can keep it from showing up at all. And of course, you then have the exile effects, the subtleties, and flages. So, I mean, this is what a control deck looks like, always tied together by the one ring. But this is if you want to beat Nadu, or if you want to beat the rest of the format, if Nadu is not legal when you're listening to this is a good place to start as a control deck, like you see Charles bring to the finals of our tournament here.
Yeah, and I mean, this is textbook control deck, the 4 counter spells, a bunch of cantrips, get galvanic discharges, and kind of one thing that is very interesting to me about this control deck is how quickly it is able to turn the corner. Now, I will point out in the mana base, we've seen a lot of these Jeskai decks when we saw Garrett Alford play. have a copy of Arena of Glory. And if you take a look at the mana base, Corbin, there is
Mhm.
no Arena of Glory present. There is the Minamo, the Monumental Henge, Otawara, that's kind of the flex spots, but no arenas. And that actually could be a huge deal because we've seen time and time again where Flage is in the graveyard, arenas in play, and that really presents, that sort of represents effectively a one turn, sometimes a two-turn clock.
Right.
And the difference between Flage having haste and not having haste is really huge, especially when you need to get your Nadu opponent dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially 9 damage, not to mention sometimes the extra trigger can be what you need just to clear the board. I mean, how many Flage Figures have we seen take down Wall of Roots over the course of the weekend, right? That can sometimes just be what you need. So, all right, I think we are getting ready. Our players are shuffling up. We are nearing the finals of the tournament. It's been a long weekend, but it has been a fun one. Devin, excited to cast the finals here with you. Let's go.
Oh yeah. So I believe Ellenbogen is going to be in the play because they are the 1 seed, Charles the 7 seed. So that certainly could be that is certainly a huge part of this as well. And really what Ellenbogen is looking for is a sort of, it's tough, right? Because if you have a fast start with a bunch of one drops or other mana dorks, that kind of plays into the Wrath of the Skies. But if you go too slow, then you're kind of playing into the control game plan, and you can't really afford to give this Jeskai deck a lot of time. So you kind of need a little bit like a mix of both. But I think in general, I believe that Alan Bogan just kind of wants to go as fast as possible, just because giving the control deck enough time to start casting the One Ring and able to hold up mana and things like that is not where Alan Bogan wants to be.
It looks like both players actually going to keep on mulliganing here, so going to be a bit of a slower start. I have to imagine. I don't know. I guess I would think that the mulligans would advantage the control deck that doesn't need as many cards to piece together to do its thing. That said, Nadu obviously mulligans very well, and it only needs a couple of cards, so it's kind of a push and pull there because the control deck, of course, wants access to as many resources as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is when you have when you have the One Ring in your deck, it doesn't really matter how many mulligans you take. Like if you just keep a
Yeah.
hand that's maybe a piece of interaction, a One Ring, and a couple of lands, the piece of interaction maybe buys you enough time to get to the One Ring, and once you have that card in play, it just kind of undoes essentially every single mulligan that you've taken up to that point. So, and because Andrew is not really trading resources for Charles, like Andrew is not something like a Jund deck or a Control Mirror. Charles is not going to be, worried about not having enough resources in hand. Just really wants to be able to find that early interaction to kind of stymie Andrew's draws a little bit, and then kind of parlay that into something like again the One Ring, Flage, something along those lines.
We've talked a lot about these players, by the way, and all of these players very skilled. Andrew Ellenbogen, by the way, Pro Tour top 8 member. Let's not
Oh
forget
yeah.
that. So when we talk about the skill level with these NRG events and what it means to qualify for the championship at the end of the year, it doesn't just mean, oh, you showed up and you spiked a tournament, you did well. Look, it means that you played over the course of a season against some of the absolute best players, not just in the region, but in the country, in the world, including Pro Tour winners like Andrew Ellenbogen. So that is what you get is an opportunity to test yourself and level up and improve at the game. Like I know so many of us want to do these events in paper. There's really no way to replicate the kind of experience you get playing 7 or 8 competitive rounds over the course of a day to try to get to a position like this. So some of the absolute best players you will find are present here this weekend in Madison. Obviously, you find 6 of them here at this table. Looks like we are finally keeping our opening hands, and here we go. Windswept Heath pass.
Yeah, taking a look, trying to get a good look at Ellen Bogan's hand. I saw an Outrider, a Temple Garden, a Shuko, a Saga, and a Shifting Woodland. So a bit of a mana heavy hand here. Now, we kind of had this discussion where the Urza Saga, traditionally good against control because it's able to generate multiple bodies that Charles eventually has to answer. But because of the fact that there are copies of Wrath of the Skies in the Jeskai deck, that is a clean way to kind of take care of an Urza Saga. And, we saw Garrick yesterday. There was that, remember that game where Garrick had a couple of a couple of Wrath of the Skies early and just
Yep.
fired them off on turn 2 and turn 3 on sagas as
Right.
stone rains. And if there is a copy of Wrath in Charles's hand, I'd be interested to see if that is something that he decides to fire off, if Andrew deploys the saga next turn.
All right, no one drop from Andrew. I did spot an encore in his hand. It looks like we do have a saga here, though, on turn 2. So we're setting up for that turn 4 combo win that the deck can often do, where they establish for the first few turns that you use your saga on turn 4 when you have access to a Nadu via either Nadu or Cord. So that could be where we're headed, but we'll just skip ahead a little bit and play Shuko now. That
Yeah,
gets it
interesting.
going, yeah.
Interesting decision for Andrew to play the Shuko here. Is aware of the presence of Wrath of the Skies. So, if say Charles takes this turn off, I did spot a Wrath of the Skies in Charles's hand. So takes
Mhm.
this turn off, and the next turn can Wrath for 1 to clean up the Shuko and the Urza Saga. So that is going to be a backbreaking play next turn. And Andrew
Ooh,
picks up a copy of Delighted Halfling.
might even be better. Well, I guess it would hit that, but if you can't hit for more than that, the halfling could work out here for Ellenbogen.
Yeah,
Certainly gives them more options.
presumably, if Ellenbogen is taking playing the saga here, I'm guessing he's probably just going to want to make a saga token this turn.
Yeah.
Looks like the shifting woodland, and presumably that's going to be a pass. But this Wrath is still going to be pretty backbreaking. It's going to take care of the saga and the Shuko. Now, Andrew does still have that Outrider Encore left over, which if a Nadu comes off the top, that in combination can. If both those resolve and maybe Charles doesn't have as much interaction left, that could help. But yeah, we see the Wrath here, and that's going to set Andrew kind of back to the Stone Age.
Well, and what's huge about this here is not only does it obviously get the Shuko and the Years of Saga, but it also sends Andrew's mana to waste, right? If his plan was to just make a construct, he's not able to really to advance very far with that. So big play here from Charles on turn 3. Wrath of the Skies has just been absolutely clutch. Every time we've seen it played, it's been the card that makes these Jeskai decks work.
Yep. So yeah, Andrew's leftovers: 2 lands, a Delighted Halfling, and an Outrider, and I believe another copy of Saga. That's actually pretty good because now Andrew can go back onto the Saga plan, where maybe next turn make a construct, turn after make a construct, Saga fetch a Shuko, and Charles is really going to need a second copy of Wrath.
Another Wrath
See,
would be insane, but Flage is not bad either, right?
yeah. So there's a Flage. Trying to get a good look at the leftovers here for Charles. I think I see a discharge and I think a whole bunch of lands. So not a lot going on for Charles here. And Andrew
Well,
picked up, I want to say, a Wall of Roots.
you can. I mean, if Andrew's not presenting a game-ending threat, at least for the moment, if you're Charles, you now have access to Flage in your graveyard. So fetch gets one more into your graveyard. Discharge puts another one in your graveyard. That gets you to 3. If one of those cards in your hand is a fetch land, that gets you to 4. Surveil gets you to 5. We've done this math before. That might be enough to get you to Flage. But that said, Andrew is in fact presenting an incredible board with the Wall of Roots and an Urza Saga about to pop.
Yeah, end of turn can make another construct token, and Charles is really going to need something this turn. Discharge can take care of one of the constructs at least. He's going to surveil here. Presumably wants to just put most things into the graveyard just for the Flage specifically. I mean, you can imagine if there's a One Ring on top, Charles is maybe interested in keeping a card like that, but not a lot that you would want to keep here because you're so close to getting this Flage into the graveyard. And as I say that, I'm proven wrong. There, we got a top here from Charles.
Yeah, I
That was
guess
good.
so. But okay, here we go. Land number 5.
Was a Wrath of the Skies. So Wrath is going to be able to clear the Wall of Roots and the Saga. So 2 sagas up, 2 sagas down for Andrew. And again, still doesn't really have much going on here after this Wrath of the Skies.
Well, again with the wasted mana too. I mean, you look at it that way. We're talking 6 wasted mana for Ellenbogen here over the course of the first 4 turns. That's not irrelevant because he's planning on doing something with that. He was going to make tokens and have a backup plan. But Wrath of the Skies, as it's done all weekend, just absolutely taking over.
We're going to make a
Okay,
construct token.
sure. All right, all right.
Resolves. You got it. Construct token enters the battlefield and frankly, quickly leaves the battlefield. And yeah, it looks like Andrew's leftovers are just 2 lands and an Outrider in core. So I guess we're on Outrider beatdowns.
Well, there's a shifting woodland, right? So I see probably delirium in the graveyard if we were to surveil a Nadu in, right?
Um, so
Not
yeah,
not
that
with the
would have
encore gone though.
yeah, that would have been good if the Outrider was still in play.
Yeah, with the outrider gone to that discharge, I guess you still get the surveil land, but now Ellen Bogan is just really, really getting pinched off here from any kind of board presence.
Yeah, and
The
I
sagas
can't.
have been a liability, which is not something you say often.
Right. Yeah. Normally they're very good against the control deck. And I think this is kind of just the big difference between Wraths of Old and Wrath of the Skies specifically, where normally a card like Wrath of God or Damnation, if let's say that the Wrath of the Skies didn't blow up enchantments and you were in a spot where you could say, okay, your Wrath resolves, end of turn, I'll make a construct token, untap, I'll make another one and keep going from there. But the fact that that Wrath of the Skies also destroys the enchantment is so backbreaking. And it just like it, a big part of Andrew's plan in this matchup is saga tokens because with the amount of removal that Charles has access to, you're not really going to set up the combo too often. But yeah, you did mention that Woodlands, which is online. Not a ton of good things to copy, that was the issue.
Yeah, just a wall of roots out in play for Ellen Bogan. So, okay, kind of a difficult spot here to try to dig out of. Looking pretty good if you're Charles to pick up a game. And oh, by the way, his teammate Frederick in the standard seat picked up the first game with Golgari midrange over Daniel Weiser's Gruul aggro, marching closer and closer to a possible title, possible seats at the NRG championship at the end of the season. It starts here if you're Charles with closing out the Bantnadu menace that you've done a good job at every step of the way this game, keeping under control, keeping from developing any kind of a board state, anything that might threaten you. But now you've got to find a way to finish things off.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about this in the beginning, where Wrath of the Skies is the big card in this matchup, and Charles has drawn two of them, and they've been pretty backbreaking both times. And it really just sets Andrew back to square one. And this Nadu deck is, while extremely powerful, it does kind of need a lot of stuff in play, right?
Right.
You need the Nadu, a way to target, and it's some other creatures to be able to. Okay, what are we doing? We're copying
We copied
Urza
a saga.
Saga.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I don't entirely know how this works. I think that when you copy it, it goes to chapter 1 and then the saga counter remains on it. So I think if you copy it again next turn, it would go to chapter 2. I
If you
think
copy it
that's
in
how it
your
works.
upkeep, if you were to copy it in
Yeah.
your upkeep or draw step, you then hit your main phase and it adds a counter. I
Yeah.
think somehow that I think this would actually work. Yes. I think that's where we're at. However, where Charles is at is finally finding something to turn the corner, and that something is the One Ring. So I also spot what looks like another Wrath of the Skies in hand. Lorian revealed to go get a land. So Andrew doing cool things, Charles doing things that are more likely to actually just end the game. Now, that said, I guess the One Ring doesn't necessarily stop you from dying to a Nadu combo if Andrew were able to piece that together, but certainly back up against the wall for Ellen Bogan.
Yeah, and the Lorien revealed actually going to put a card in the graveyard for the Flage. Now, we did talk about during the when we were reviewing the deck list, we did mention that Charles does not have access to Arena of Glory.
Right.
So keep that in mind. It's going to shorten the clock a little bit. Now, that being said, Flage is still going to kind of just dominate this board here. Probably going to come down, maybe kill a construct because it looks like Andrew is maybe on the Shifting Woodlands Urza Saga plan still, which is kind of funny to me. But I mean, if you got nothing else going on, you got to do something, right?
I guess so. I honestly have never seen this in my life. So I guess that's cool. We get to see that before this deck goes away. But Shifting Woodlands is stating out to me as yeah, it works really nice in this deck. I have a feeling this card might stick around even if Nadu doesn't, because Shifting Woodland appears to be pretty powerful in these green based combo decks.
Yeah, it just and the really interesting thing about Woodland is it is immune to a lot of, Wrath of the Skies is a card that we brought up, right? Wrath of the
Yeah,
Skies, fantastic against this Nanu deck, blows up the Shuko, the Saga, the Nanu, everything. It doesn't hit shifting Woodlands. So if, Andrew finds himself in a spot where has a combo piece in the graveyard and a Woodlands in play, draws another combo piece, that is something that could lead to a victory here for Andrew as we see. Okay, so interesting. We shifting woodland copied the Urza saga, had the opportunity to make a saga token, and we didn't, and we chose to play the halfling instead. So
we're
maybe just
just
wants
aiming to
access to
get it
more
to
mana next
3.
turn. Yeah.
Yeah, aiming to get it to 3. Go get the Shuko, draw Nadu, win the game. Hope your opponent's 7 cards are all bad. That's probably the hope, but that's really all you can do in this spot, right? I spot a dress down, a wrath in the skies.
Oh, okay. I'm
Charles
being
thinking it through.
Yeah, chat is actually okay. I didn't know this is how that works. So apparently,
Oh,
when you get the lore counters from the saga, it permanently gains the ability, even if it is no longer an Urza saga.
wow.
Interesting.
Today I learned that for sure. I thought we were actually on top of that, knowing that, hey, at least sticks around. I did not know that part of it.
That is a weird interaction. So I guess you have an endless Urza saga on too. And funny enough,
It's pretty
so
good.
we talked about how Wrath of the Skies is good at killing Urza saga. It's not good at killing a copy of Urza saga that is not an enchantment. So funny enough, Andrew still has that Urza saga in
Wow.
play.
And he can just make him one at the end step,
Yeah.
and he knows it, and there he goes making the construct. What a line. Great job, chat, by the way, and great job, Ellenbogen, because this is very threatening if you can do it every turn forever. But of course, there is a
Well,
Flage for
yeah,
Charles.
Flage is going to take care of that. Every a construct token every turn is good, but you know what's better every turn? A lightning helix to kill
Yeah.
that construct token in combination with all the cards that Charles is getting from the One Ring. And yeah, presumably Flage is good against this sort of small ball bunch of Urza Saga token game plan. So you would imagine if Andrew can get out of this, it's likely going to have to involve a Nadu or some combination of combo piece off the top. I guess the Woodland does give you Shuko access, which there's a Shuko as well. So I mean, it's something, but I think Andrew's going to need a little bit more.
Yeah, Andrew. Now this is where we look at the life totals. This is where you mention the arena, right? Like having haste last turn would have been pretty big there. That looked like a subtlety off the top for Charles, who of course can draw even more cards here, which looks like another ring and a couple more lands. So feels like this one is pretty much wrapped up. And on that note, look over in that legacy. Kamari Bolger with Painter's Servant, which we got to watch a little bit of in the last round, has taken the first game over Matthias Hunt's Demir Scam, which means if Charles is able to wrap this one up, as it looks like he's about to, his team would have gone 3 for 3 in those first 3 games, which, if you've ever participated in a team event before, feels as good as it can possibly feel.
Yeah, and I mean, I believe the last time we saw the Weiser, Ellenbogen Hunt team play, they all lost game number one, and there was a bit of a reverse sweep. So let's see if the
Okay.
history can repeat itself, because yeah, this game is not looking super great here for Andrew. It's 7 life facing down, Flage, One Ring, Teferi, all this stuff, Solitude in hand. I guess I don't see a white card, but Dress Down. That should certainly seal things up. Dress Down going to be able to sort of shut down whatever Andrew could potentially draw if it's, Nadu or any sort of combo piece. And yeah, we're going to make a construct here. And it looks like we are thinking about dress down now. No, we're discarding hand size. Okay. Is that a third saga? I think it might have been.
Yeah, Ellenbogen, not a lot you can do here. Takes a look at his card. At 7 life, staring down the One Ring, Teferi Flage just replays a Shuko. Bit of a shrug. Yeah, this one is about to wrap up. It seems like let's stick with this for a minute more, then we might be able to hop into another match you. Because remember, here in Madison, this is a team trios event, and that Shuko is not going to resolve anyway. It runs into counterspell. But as I was saying, this is a team trios event. That means you can play with your friends. As 84 teams did, do the math, that's 250 players we had out playing team trios today, standard, modern, and legacy. Dress Down takes care of the token actually because it makes it lose the ability. And after 7 rounds and then a quarterfinals, a semifinals, here we are in the finals with Frederick, Borgamicky, Charles Dusterberg, and Kamari Bolger looking to take the first 3 games of our finals, and that makes it official right there. Charles goes up a game in Modern. I think we might be able to hop right over to Standard here, which is starting for you all. We'll get you as much magic as possible of our championship match, and here we go.
Oh no, 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 Frederick, don't do it. Creatures, creatures behind lands. You can't tell. Come on, we gotta get a table spotter down there, please. But yeah, this is the Golgari midrange against Gruul aggro. Now, as far as game one is concerned, I think it would generally it's really close. I played a lot of this matchup. I
Yeah.
think that the Golgari deck is slightly ahead, but not by a ton. And then the thing is, when it comes to the sideboard, that's where we really get the heavy hitters here from the Gruul deck. One card that I want to highlight here is 4 copies of Urabrask's Forge, which is a card that we see a ton of in a lot of red decks, not just aggressive ones, mid range, control, all this kind of stuff. And the thing about Urabrask's Forge is it's actually pretty difficult for the Golgari deck to remove. And well, some lists have more answers than others, but in general, I would say that there's not as many answers as of right now. And it is a card that, given enough time, can very, very easily take over a game.
Yeah, I remember the first time someone played this against me. Granted, it was limited, but I had to do a double take after about the second turn on it, and I realized just how unbeatable it felt. And it turns out that translates over to standard in some cases as well. So, okay, we're on turn 3. We've got dueling early creatures here. Both players just kind of developing 17 to 20. What are sort of the things if you're if you're playing this matchup, what are we looking for in the first couple of turns, Doom, that matters, right? From either side here. Like what are the players looking to try to do to get ahead in the game?
So it's interesting because you see this Gruul aggro deck, and
Mhm.
you would think Gruul aggro, a lot of cheap creatures, a lot of pump spells, maybe some burn, things like that. But as we saw in previous matches, I remember the match where it was Daniel against Raja. We saw this red deck, the capability of it to it just has this really innate ability to grind, right? Emberheart
Mhm.
Challenger finds more cards. Questing Druid, that's going to find more cards off the top of the library.
Right.
And especially in post board games, we mentioned the Urbrask's Forge. We mentioned there was Hunter's Talent, which is a card that Daniel boarded in the last match. Excuse me. And I think that the if the game is going well for Daniel, certainly you could go out of the gates and have like a really fast start, but that in general is not as good in the post board games with the
Mhm.
Golgari deck going towards a lot more sweepers. So it's kind of a little bit of both. But what I don't want to see for Daniel is a bunch of lands, and it looks like there are 3 lands left over in Daniel's hands. So draw steps not being super cooperative.
Yeah, I do spot a couple of lands at least over there for Frederick too. So maybe both players going a little slowly here. And I was going to say Frederick has access to a creature land there with the cottage, and now Daniel does as well, playing the skyline.
Cool. I think that was a Shieldred. I don't know if that was in hand or right off the top, but in any case, Shieldred is going to hit the battlefield this turn. And with Daniel on all lands, this game might be over pretty quickly here.
Yeah, that is one of those that if you can't, it's one thing when the board's stalled and it's ticking you down for 2 at a time, but if it actually gets to start swinging, things get
Mm.
out of control very quickly. And unfortunately, I do think I saw another land drawn there for Daniel, trying to keep his team alive here in the finals at NRG Championship at Madison, but that is in fact just 3 lands over there. Frederick Orgamenki looking very, very good behind that Shieldred to take a big step towards claiming the title for his team.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of exactly what we saw in one of the last times that we were watching Daniel, where Daniel kept a hand that was 3 lands, 4 spells, and only drew lands the whole game. Now, maybe it was 3 lands, 3 spells, because I think Daniel made a mulligan this game. But in any case, yeah, I mean, just the top of the deck has not been kind to Daniel. And I mean, I think Golgari is ahead, as I said, in this matchup because cheap creatures that block well, Preacher, cheap removal spells, Cut Down, Go for the Throat, Shieldred for life gain, Virtue for life gain, especially this specific version. Not a lot of Golgari decks are playing a bunch of virtues, and Frederick has decided to play the full 4 copies and kill your creature, gain a little bit of life. When your aggressive deck is trying to race, can be really difficult here. As we see this Ridge line getting in the way of Dread Knight. I wonder if Frederick is. I mean, Frederick is probably okay with this though, because then you can just cast it from the graveyard and gain life with the Shieldred. So you're probably totally fine with this.
Yeah, that seems to be the plan here. I mean, he doesn't know, of course, right, when he makes that attack that Daniel's only play with all that mana is to just activate the creature, right? That
Yeah.
seems like maybe not exactly what you're the most scared of given the options. And in fact, he does just follow up with the Preacher of the Schism.
Yeah.
So,
Let's see
all
if we
right,
can find
this
a
is
spell.
maybe last chance
Uh,
here, basically, for Daniel, for being honest about how many turns he has to draw out of this. Let's see what the hit was. He's
it was a
thinking about
spell.
it. What's a spell?
It's not a great spell though. It's a Tyvar stand. So a couple of options here. You can try to use the stand defensively, where you go block the Shieldred,
Right.
stand. You could attack, and then if Frederick blocks, stand to kill. Or you could quote unquote cycle the stand, which is just cast it for 1 mana, get a card off the challenger. I think if I'm in Daniel's position, you're so far behind that I think you might just have to try to use it defensively.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Daniel's just going to pass the turn.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know Frederick is he's not on a ton of cards in hand. He had 2, I believe. He's going to 3. If you're Daniel, given the position you're in, well, I guess it was 3 going to 4. You basically just have to hope, and it's not an unreasonable hope, that Frederick doesn't have anything extra. However, this is devastating. Devastating.
Oh, it's not even just a removal spell, right? If it
Yeah.
was Go for the Throat or Cut Down, Daniel could just say, okay, I'll Tyvar stand in response. Liliana just gets around the Tyvar stand entirely, and that is so brutal here for Daniel.
Oh, he just say, "Yeah, you got it, man. It's fine, sure." Or maybe we're thinking about it. I'm not sure. There we go. The minus happens. That makes target opponent sacrifice a creature. Now, here's the thing, though. Now, and this doesn't help with the stand, but he does have the ability to activate the Ridgeline.
Yeah, you could just 4 mana sack the Ridgeline. I think that makes sense because one of your only ways out of this is to kind of like chain a couple of cards, hit a card off a challenger, maybe a monstrous rage, and it does make kind of sense. Now, here's the thing: do you just block with the challenger and use the stand to keep it alive for a turn and take less damage? The answer is no, but we're actually not even attacking with the Shieldred.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Doesn't want to risk it to, say, Monstrous Rage or anything else that could
Yeah.
make it big enough, I suppose. It recognizes that I have this in play. Not only is it eventually going to kill you by draining you, it's going to keep my life total safe. You're the Monstrous Rage deck. If I'm above 20, Monstrous Rage is a lot less scary. And oh, by the way, I still have cards in hand, and here comes another one.
I think it was a spell. I couldn't quite get a good look at it. Definitely the Tyvar stand. And now you're in the same spot here for Daniel. Do you want to hold up the stand for defense? Do you want to attack and try to, entice Frederick to block with the Shieldred? But, given Frederick's in no attack with the Shieldred last turn, it seems very unlikely he's going to put that in front of the way of the challenger if that does
Right.
attack. So, I mean, you're probably in the same spot where you have to play it on defense. It could be a monstrous rage. I wonder, we got the we're thinking about something. I'm confused. Okay.
Sure.
Land was picked up and then replayed. Got it. Okay. Um again, I think Daniel's best draw step here is probably Questing Druid, where that can find you some more action off the top.
Right.
Um
So also we keep in mind Daniel's got 2 cards in hand right now. I'm not sure exactly how his mana lines up with those, but if Frederick untaps and has the ability to uptick Liliana, you may end up losing one of those cards. So just another thing to keep in mind, and that maybe what's happening with the land here. I don't know
oh, okay.
if we decided if he's allowed to pick up that land or not.
I see. Yeah, it
It's
also might be a
possible. Yeah.
situation. It also might be a situation where he wants to play. I think it was a Manifold Mouse, and he might want to play Manifold Mouse target the challenger, go to combat, and then if a land is hit off of the challenger, then you could play that land. Because think about it this way, where challenger is a 2/2. If you play the manifold mouse with no kicker, I'm gonna call it kicker, offspring.
It
But
is kicker.
okay, we're gonna play it for the full amount. So that's interesting. We can target the challenger twice to give it double strike and trample. We could also potentially play an untapped land and then Tyvar stand for one, which would make it a 4/4 double strike indestructible trample, which would certainly attack past the Shieldred. But I wonder if this is just a defensive play from Daniel. And I think, like you mentioned, wanted to keep the land in hand because of that Liliana.
That's right. And now we appear to be debating passing the turn, thinking it through. Looks like Daniel may be counting out some math. A lot to go on here, a lot to consider. This is what it all comes down to. And keep in mind, these players have been playing Magic not just all day today, but all weekend. And here they are at the end of it all, playing the biggest match of them all with all the pressure. It's a lot to play through. You cannot fault them for taking their time on every decision that they make, making sure everything is correct. And here we go. Daniel finds the talent and goes for the land and plays a talent and just passes the turn back. So here we
Hmm.
go. Big turn here. That was about all Daniel could hope for, is to just get back on board, get some board presence, get things going again. And now action over to you, Frederick.
Yeah, the Liliana's going to get the Tyvar stand out of the hand. And then I believe there was also a copy of Scrap Shooter, I think is the last card in Frederick's hand, which for those of you who don't know that card, it is the 3 mana 4/4. Let me pull up the exact text on it. 3 mana 4/4 reach. You can gift a card. When it enters, if the gift was promised, destroy an artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. So that could, if the gift was promised. The funny thing that I didn't realize at first glance with gift a card is
Mhm.
with Shieldred, where you could force your opponent to draw a card and then deal them
Uh,
2 damage with Shieldred to like kind of one shot them, which maybe that'll be pretty funny if that comes up this game.
that is likely to come up over the course of maybe not this game, but over the course of these two cards overlap in standard, which is kind of funny. Um, Liliana was also very good this game, right? Not only did it do that earlier, the minus earlier to take a creature out, it has now got Tivar stand. Liliana has actually been legal in standard for years at this point, and it just is. It feels like it's been on the verge of playability, and it comes in and out of decks. But it was very powerful here, as it's very good overall in this Golgari deck. Here, this is a big attack from Frederick. So Daniel is he did everything he could to get back on the board, needed things to go his way. And now this is the last chance here, right? You need Frederick to not have much going on. Instead, he has the card we just saw. We see that he is promising a gift and pointing his finger at the talent.
Yeah, this is lethal because Daniel's going to draw off a Shieldred this time, going to go to one, and then draw
Yep.
step. He's going to die to the Shieldred. So unless there's an upkeep Witchstalker Frenzy, maybe no, I believe
There
that is going to do it.
is not. That's a handshake. The first game of the finals going over to Frederick Borgominki with Golgari mid range taking down Daniel Weiser's Gruul aggro. We have one result here in the finals in our G series. Devin O'Donnell, Doomwake, and I in the booth bringing to you the finals of our tournament. That was a great match.
Yeah, that was an amazing match. Got to see some awesome standard action. I mean, Daniel was kind of behind that whole game as we kind of came into it, flooded a little bit, was able to muster up something a little bit,
Mhm.
with the Tyvar stand and the Ember Heart Challenger, but that Liliana off the top just kind of sealed the deal. I think we are going to get to take a look into Legacy because we started with Modern, switched to
Right.
Standard, and going to get you guys some Legacy action for the finals. So this is game number 2. Kamari Bulger on Painter Servant is up a game over Matthias Hunt on Demir Scam. This game doesn't look as good for the Painter Servant player.
Yeah, it would only be right for us to go from modern to standard to legacy, as this is a team trios event. And look, when we've seen this deck before, we've other versions of it called it Demir Frog, because it turns out it's all about the Psychic Frog, and Psychic Frog is really going off here for Matthias Hunt, who appears to have a massive lead as we come into this game. And Well, if you're a fan of islands, you're doing well. As it turns out, Kamari has a mix of islands and mountains, but it's just the tutu bit of the Harbinger of the Seas that's a big problem at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, Harbinger of the Seas kind of makes Ancient Tomb a little bit better. So, I mean, you don't have to
Does
take
yeah.
damage from it. Matthias has got a basic swamp in play too. I think Matthias has a copy of Entomb, Reanimate, and Grief, I think is what Matthias is working with, which funny enough would be pretty good here, but only access to one basic swamp or one black source of mana in play. So can't quite do that. And we're going to see, I think, is that Fairy Macabre? Yeah, Fairy
Yeah.
Macabre. We got two of them. Get them out of here.
All right. Well, I guess that's why we weren't able to do anything else, though, unfortunately. But yeah, get the cards out of here.
All right, we're tapping 5 mana. Oh, this is why we're fairy
Okay.
macabbing. We have a dragon engine in the graveyard. So that's going to allow Kamari to discard hand, draw a couple of cards, try and find some action. Yeah, don't want those two Urza Sagas against. Or wait, is that? That might be Saga and Phyrexian Devourer. Yeah, I think it was Devourer, which, to be fair, you don't want that card in the hand either.
All
We're
right.
going to see an attack for 4, but I think Matthias just has lethal on the crackback, right? You just go discard cards to Frog, give it flying, and then I think that's going to be all over.
Unless there's a blast, which there is not, because there you go, Kamari picking them up. Well, does that send us back over to where it all began? Modern and Nadu. Oh, look, Nadu's in play. We'll see where we're at here, but here we go. This could be the last time you see it. It is Andrew Ellenbogen playing Nadu. He has the bird in play. He's got a Hex Parasite in play. If you don't recognize that card up top there, it looks like a lot of his hand has been revealed to Charles, including a Swan Song to protect. So, hey, is that the Titania I spot?
Yes, I believe it
Oh, we
is. So
found it. We found
Ellenbogen,
it.
yeah, this is interesting. Where Ellenbogen has, let me pull up the deck list here real quick. Yeah, one Titania Protector of Argoth in the sideboard. We've seen this kind of in and out. Some of them have it, some of them don't. And what's nice about this card in these kind of matchups is, we talked about the kind of the fair plan, right? With Urza
Right.
Saga, and you need to have a plan for your opponent being able to interact with your combo early and often, which the Jeskai deck is very capable of doing. And Titania is a fantastic card in those kinds of matchups because it provides a body, gets a land back from the graveyard, makes another body, and it also kind of sort of combos in this weird way with Shifting Woodland,
Mm-hmm.
where if Titania is in the graveyard, you can say hold off on a couple of fetch lands, end up using the woodland to copy the Titania, and then use those fetch lands afterwards to make a bunch of 5/3s. So it kind of
Yeah.
really, it kind of gives Andrew this additional angle of attack, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it gives it a certainly more to think about out of the sideboard. This is a really interesting spot here. We've got Flage in play, which has shot something. We're not quite sure which it targeted there. I would assume the Hex Parasite, I guess, but it revealed the Wall of Roots to the Nadu trigger. So we have no way of continuously triggering Nadu right now. That seems to be where things are at. But at the same time, Charles doesn't have a board wipe to just make it uh, sort of easy. But here we go. Court of Calling. That runs straight into Counterspell, which runs straight into Swan Song, which means Court of Calling is going to restall.
Oh my goodness. Andrew with the Swan Song, and the Swan Song token is a token of himself.
Oh, and you know what? You
Classic.
can get a token
Love
of
it.
yourself if you win one of these events. That's what everyone is doing it for. Look, the points are nice, the money's nice. Obviously, qualifying for the championship is nice, but the token you get by Inkling Custom if you win one of these showdowns, you can do what Andrew Ellenbogen did. Look at that. So, all right, let's see where he goes from here. The Court of Calling is going to resolve. Now we're doing Nadu stuff with the Encore. So,
Seems like we're done, probably.
yeah, it seems like we'll pop back over to Legacy if we get a chance here. I suppose we should stick here for a minute though. Make sure that Andrew does not completely whiff. Judge is talking it over, but if Andrew's able to pick this one up, as it looks like he's in a pretty good spot to, of course, that would make him even with Charles Dusterberg. And yes, so we're making sure we haven't missed anything in Legacy. So we'll get you back over there for Demir Scam and Painter's Servant between Matthias and Kamari as soon as we can. In the meantime, here it is, the end of Nadu.
Yeah, this, like you said, this might be the last weekend that we get to see Nadu on camera. So it's very interesting to see exactly what happens. We're probably going to get a game three here, presumably. So the big question is, will Jeskai be able to take down Nadu? And the answer yesterday was no, but we'll have to
Yeah.
see if that can certainly change.
Yeah, that was the final match yesterday was Jeskai Control versus Bant Nadu. It may very well end up being the final match, possibly playing out here today as well.
Now, here's the question, Corbin. Are we going to have a 45-minute BBD turn? Here's the
Never again.
question.
Never again, I hope. And you know
See,
what's great is
that's
I've covered BBD playing Lantern. I've sat there and
oh,
written about
oh
like
boy.
covered a match of BBD playing Lantern. Like I've been through the ringer, you know?
Yeah.
But yesterday in that Nadu turn, that was something else. That was something else. So if you were with us, if you're just joining us now, first of all, welcome. Second of all, yesterday we watched a 45-minute Nadu turn by BBD as he was working out how exactly to present a deterministic loop that his opponent would accept that fit the criteria of the Magic tournament policy. And it took quite a while. And it was a send off for Nadu. And there you go, Bant Nadu picking up the win in the hands of Andrew Ellenbogen there to even that matchup with Charles. Corbin Hostler, Devin Doomwake O'Donnell in the booth with you. We've got one match down and two others that are going to come down to a third game.
We're so close to crowning a champion, and we are going to get some game threes for you in just a little bit. Last information we had from our production, I believe Legacy is still shuffling up for their last game. So as soon as they are ready, we will get you down over there. And I mean, as far as the matchup is concerned, it's a one that we've seen a couple of times where we kind of assume that the scam deck is relatively far ahead in this matchup just because there are definitely a lot of the painter deck is really all about setting up A plus B, and the
Right.
scam deck is very good at disassembling either A or B, right, where you have grief and reanimate and anything like that. So we are going to see exactly what happens here. Matthias looking at an opening 7, and looks like Kamari has already decided that we are going to take a mulligan.
I want to love this Painter Servant deck, but it feels like it's just not been able to piece anything together in these matches we've got to watch. But all it takes is one more. And if you're Kamari and you are able to pick up one more here, that's it. The tournament's over. You win. So huge stakes here. And all it takes is the Painter Servant deck can combo. So all it takes is a slight stumble out of a Demir deck, and you can get there. That said, it is in fact Kamari who is mulliganing down here, so not ideal. I spotted a couple lands that animate dead and engineered explosives over there for Matthias, so seems like a pretty reasonably reactive hand with also at least a long-term game plan there with the animate dead. I didn't spot whether there was a frog or not, but a lot of juicy targets for an opener over there for Matthias, and a pretty good one here for Kamari opening on Urza Saga.
Yeah, Urza Saga, that's kind of where you want to go. Now we've seen Kamari play a couple of times. Oh, was that okay? That was a wasteland. Got it. We've seen Kamari play a couple of times, and a card that has been really, really key in a lot of these matchups has been Vexing Bauble, which is not a
Mm-hmm.
card we see here, where Vexing Bauble gets to turn off Force of Will, Grief, Daze, all from being pitch cast. But yeah, no Vexing Bauble here, just a basic mountain and a Mox Opal on a mulligan against this grief deck that's very, very good at one for oneing. This is everything is looking up here for Matthias. Now, as far as the hand is concerned, I think I see a couple of reanimates. Looks like an animate dead, an engineered explosives,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there might be a frog hiding out there. So has a lot of ways to reanimate, but doesn't necessarily have that way to put the creature into the graveyard.
Yeah, and you can see Matthias thinking it over here. It's turn. Well, I guess it's not technically turn one; it's turn two. But we had a wasteland on turn one. Was really thinking over what he wanted to do there. and ultimately decides to play a surveil land and graveyard the card there. I'm not sure if we can get maybe a judge or to maybe help them, but where we can see that a little easier. It's tough for us to catch the graveyard right now. Pretty good one to see when when someone is playing reanimate, and I actually spot a grief. I think drawn.
Yeah, and that's huge because if there is a grief drawn for Matthias, the combination, has the grief, has the reanimate. Looks like we're going to pitch the animate dead, and this is kind of exactly what I was talking about earlier. Just without the vexing bauble, it's going to be really tough here. So okay, this
Wow.
is
Wow.
interesting.
Okay.
Where so Kamari does have two pieces of graveyard hate now. Matthias was hoping that there would only be one there, right? So you would take the
Right.
graveyard hate, reanimate the grief, and move on with your life. But because there's two pieces, now likely has to just be content with taking the Fable and then holding off for you just not casting the reanimate at that point. One
Yeah.
other thing I want to point out, very interesting decision here from Kamari. Chose not to cast the Fable, had the Ancient Tomb and the Mountain with the opportunity to cast Fable, but was worried about the presence of days. So decision from Kamari, not clear whether or not Matthias had the days at that point, but now with the Fable gone, doesn't really have a lot left over here.
Yeah. This is not a hand that looks like it's going to be putting together Painter's Servant anytime soon, right? That's the real problem here for Kamari is that you've already been now priced into this really reactive game that it's just not going to be able to work out because that Fable is now gone. In fact, he's just going to pass the turn back. So I guess you have the reanimation aspect covered. There's a reanimate in Matthias's hand, and you've got the macabre, and you got you've got lots, but what you don't necessarily have, and it's just an answer to Psychic Frog. And look at that, Matthias Hunt says, fine, I'll throw these reanimates into my graveyard. No problem. I'll pump my Psychic Frog and draw some new cards like a Psychic Frog.
Yeah, I mean, is this is kind of a classic tale of drew too many sideboard cards, and the sideboard cards didn't happen to line up against the additional threats, right? And sometimes you see this in matchups where, like, I think this is a maybe similar to Arclight Phoenix and Pioneer, where,
Mhm.
or even like maybe some instances of Dredge in the past, where a lot of graveyard hate comes in. These graveyard focused decks get to kind of rely or pivot to a plan B. It turns out that Psychic Frog is just kind of the plan A and the plan B, and you have to overload your deck with so many sideboard cards to stop the Entomb Reanimate draws, and none of those cards line up well against Frog, and that is exactly what we're seeing. Now, to the credit of Kamari, there are a bunch of Pyroblasts, right? There's six
Yeah.
in the main, three Pyro, three Red Elemental. But now, even if you find one of those, that only answers one of the frogs, so the other one's still good to go.
Yeah. Too little, too late at this point, I think. Yeah, what's interesting, you brought up Dredge. I do remember that. I remember you draw all of your Relic of Progenitus, and your opponent just casts the prize amalgams and attacks you.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a
Cast
minute,
Creeping Chill.
you're not allowed to do that.
Creeping Chill, 4 mana, 3 damage. Good
Yeah,
enough.
right. Stinkweed Imp attacking me. We're not. That's not how this is supposed to work. But you said it. Psychic Frog is both Plan A and Plan B, and just replaces itself anytime it gets through, and it just snowballs to an absurd extent. As Matthias is really running away, obviously now with this one, and if we think Matthias closes this out, picks it up, that would send it back to the modern table to determine a winner.
Yep, and presumably that is likely where we're going to end up going. It seems pretty difficult for Kamari to get out of this. I mean, Painter Servant is a deck it's a combo deck, right? You're trying to set
Right.
up A plus B, and you don't tend to have as many good draws when you don't have either A or B, and that appears to be, excuse me, the situation that we're in right now. So we see a card drawn. I believe that was from the Psychic Frog. And yeah, I mean, I think Matthias just has a couple cantrips in here. Maybe, I mean, at this point, Matthias just wants to maybe find a force of will to kind of
Right.
close it out officially. If there's some world where Kamari draws like back to back to back perfects, maybe there's a world. So yeah, Matthias really just
Well,
wants to find that copy of Force of Will. Kind of
Well, and you
seal it up.
mentioned it earlier that this Painter Servant deck doesn't look like Painter Servant decks you saw 10 years ago or whatever in Legacy. And Fable the Mirror Breaker, when we're talking about, well, he needs this and then this and this and this, and you think, wow, this deck seems terrible. There's no way it could ever do any of that. Well, you have Fable the Mirror Breaker kind of bridges it all together pretty well. And that's something we've talked about a lot over, I think, the course of the weekend in these formats is the cards that get you from the early game through the mid game into the late game, like Fable, like the One Ring. And that's what allows the deck to turn some of its just excess into gas. I mean, you don't want to be doing this, for instance. You'd rather be pitching this
Hard
Simian
cap, Simeon
Spirit
Spirit
Guide.
Guide, folks.
Yeah, you might want to be pitching this one to that Fable. Unfortunately, you didn't get a chance this game. It was, of course, discarded. And instead, we are playing Simian Spirit Guide.
Yeah, I don't know if perhaps we can maybe switch over to modern just because this game is very, very likely over. Want to make sure we get some,
Yeah.
that last match on camera because if this is going to be the decider, if Matthias likely going to take that game over Kamari, and this is it for the entire tournament. The winner of this match, going to take everything home, going to be qualified for the NRG championships. And Charles going to shock land number 4 in and pass, perhaps representing a subtlety or something along those lines. Most likely subtlety would be my guess. And looks like we have a Vexing Bauble and an Urza Saga here for Andrew. So kind of on this perhaps maybe Saga fair plan. We'll have to see what the contents of Andrew's hand is. I think I saw an Endurance among some other things. We're actually just going to pop the Bauble here.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's important that you have the 4 mana for the subtlety you mentioned because uh, you can't play it for free, which we've seen come up a lot against Nadu. That said, here we go, just moving the Saga up to 2, playing the land is Ellenbogen. Decides he doesn't actually need the bauble. I did spot, if nothing else, I see an Endurance, a Court of Calling, a Swan Song in hand. So Swan Song can do quite a bit of work to protect against Jeskai control, as we've seen. And if Andrew Ellenbogen can figure out how, with these cards, to pull off Nadu combo one last time, his team will win the championship of our Team Trios event here at NRG Series in Madison. Of course, Charles Dusterberg here is on Jeskai control, trying to do the same. Staring down Urza Saga on 2 with a big choice here of what to do, it seems. Set the cards down and went into the tank, started thinking about how do we go forward from here?
Yeah, it looks like Charles is working with a couple of counter spells, a Flage, and perhaps a Subtlety. Could have been a bluff last turn. So Charles did shock in that land number 4 to at least represent Subtlety. Maybe has it, maybe doesn't, maybe wants to bluff. But the hand for Andrew, I believe it was Court of Calling, Teferi, Swan Song, Springheart, Nantuko, Endurance, and I couldn't quite. Oh, it's the Sun Cleanser. Andrew actually drew Sun Cleanser that turn. So that is what Andrew has to work with. So a lot of options here. Going to make a Saga token. Maybe, the Saga is very likely to go get Shuko. And then from there, float mana, get Shuko. You can use, maybe play the Sun Cleanser this turn. Maybe wants to save the Court of Calling for a potential Nadu, but then that gets got by the counter spell. So a lot of interesting decisions, and it seems like Andrew is maybe content with just playing this plan B, right? Make some Saga tokens, present some other stuff. You could even Springheart Nantuko the Saga token and start going that route with backup with the Swan Song too. So
Lots to consider here for both players. Andrew also, by the way, holding onto a full grip of cards. Here we go. Looks like we're moving into the draw step. And Urza Saga is the draw, and there's an Urza Saga with a trigger on the stack that Andrew's going to decide what to do here. You can tick it up to 3 and do nothing and just get mana from it and go get something out of your deck. Or you can make a construct token. You already have one. Is making another one good? That puts pressure on Charles in a different sort of way. Now, keep in mind we're playing team trios, and that means that these two players, having sat in the middle seats, have their teammates on either sides of them watching this match, and their matches are over. They've split. The winner of this wins the entire tournament. And in a team tournament, you are allowed to help your teammates. So this is not the one-on-one you're seeing these two players here. This is a 3-on-3 Hive Mind v Hive Mind that you're watching take place right now.
Yeah, Matthias Hunt won the legacy match. Now we'll get to see if Matthias Hunt tokens can take down the modern match as well.
That's right.
And honestly, I see chat kind of wanting to see a 5-hour turn. We might not even get to that point. These constructs with this third another copy of Urza Saga might just be more enough to cross the finish line. They're already 3 power, which means
One
the
of them
one
has
that's
four.
attacking is a
Yeah.
4-3. That's going to put Charles down to 11. And I couldn't quite get a good look at Charles's hand, but really is going to need a copy of Wrath of the Skies here, and would also need Wrath of the Skies with Counterspell backup due to that
Right.
Swan Song.
Right. That's the real problem for him here is that Nadu's plan B, just backed up by a simple swan song, looks like a pretty real clock from where I'm sitting. It's 7 damage next turn. In fact, it's more than that because if Andrew wanted, he could make another construct to pump them for another 2 points of damage, right? So then you're already looking at 9 coming across just next turn without anything else happening, and that's with Swan Song backup. Although I guess Swan Song would provide a blocker, but no matter how you cut it, Charles is in a bit of trouble
Hmm.
here. Now, Flage is a great way to try to dig out.
Interesting decision here from Charles because I got another look at Charles's hand, and there is a copy of Supreme Verdict. So Charles did have the option to fire off Supreme Verdict to clear the constructs, and chooses to go with Flage. Now you might ask, why would you do that instead of just taking the 2-for-1? I
Uh huh.
think the plan here for Charles is to let Andrew make more constructs and get the next constructs, like the second wave of
Right.
constructs, off of the new saga. I think that might be the plan here for Charles. Also, notably, it puts the Flage in the graveyard. So the turn after you verdict, you can then Flage, presuming there's enough cards in the graveyard. So a lot of things to think about. And I think there might have been a second copy of Flage 2, but I guess you don't want to deploy the second Flage because you don't want to go shields down on the counter spell. So that does make sense
Right.
to you.
Yeah, you don't want, because what always that's the problem with this Nadu deck, and I say problem in the sense that that's what makes it so strong is that even when it's doing what it's doing now, which is threatening enough, it can always just combo. So if you're Charles, you're having to navigate the board that it's producing with just its mana base while holding up answers to the threat of combo. So there is a lot to consider here, but you're right. It does seem like he's taking the angle here where that verdict will be able to play through Swan Song. Because remember, of course, Supreme Verdict is uncounterable. And that means that if you can clean up the end of the tokens, then well, then maybe you just have to deal with the combo, which to be fair is difficult enough. But that, if you're Charles, is the battle you have chosen to fight by bringing Jeskai Control this weekend against Nani.
Yeah, Sun Cleanser is going to get the energy out of here for Charles, which is good for a couple of reasons. One, it turns off Galvanic Discharge, but more importantly, it turns off Wrath of the Skies. So Charles is now going to need to find a way to remove that Sun Cleanser. Now, we know at home that Charles does have that in the form of Supreme Verdict. But Andrew doesn't know that. So interesting draw step here from Charles. Picked up a copy of the One Ring, so now has the option to maybe cast the One Ring and hold up Counterspell. Let Andrew make the Saga tokens. Next turn, Verdict to clean up the tokens and the Sun Cleanser, and then maybe follow that up by holding up another Counterspell. So a lot of decisions here for Charles. You could also maybe go towards. I don't know exactly how many cards are in the graveyard, but you could maybe go towards Flage from the graveyard plus hold up Counterspell. It's interesting to see how Charles goes. Yeah, not enough cards in the graveyard. Only three plus the Flage. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Got work to do, that's for sure. And complicating all of this is that while you're Charles busy trying to work your way out of the board and keep up a counterspell to not lose, Andrew has also just got shifting woodland, right? So that's another long-term problem you have to deal with. In addition to all the cards in his hand, these Jeskai control decks, what they have in early power on interaction wrath of guys, they lack in late game Sphinx's Revelation type cards to just completely reload. And that makes things more tricky all the way around. You have to really be careful with every resource, every trigger. And we see another Flage, which would, once it dies, be the 5th card in the graveyard, which is not enough to escape one of them. But it does add another trigger, even without energy. The other construct goes down. So all of a sudden, this plan that Andrew was riding on for a few turns, it's not gone, but it's certainly a lot worse than it looked a little bit ago. Now, also remember the trick we saw earlier with the shifting woodland picking up triggers from Urza Saga, giving it the ability to make constructs forever. kind of game where it could come up.
Yeah, and there's also an interesting line where so Wrath of the Skies, in order to fulfill the X requirement, where if you want X to be more than zero, you would need energy to do that. But you still could Wrath for zero, right? The construct tokens do have
Right.
mana value zero, so those still would get cleaned up by the Wrath of the Skies. And we see Andrew going through the library. A couple of options here: could get a Hex Parasite, could go for a Haywire Might. And it looks like Might is the call here. And that's pretty heads up because that can potentially um, be good against a One Ring that is cast from Charles. But, again, as we talked about, this Supreme Verdict is going to clean everything up,
Right.
followed up by the One Ring with Counterspell backup. It's, things are actually looking not that bad here for Charles.
Yeah, Charles, really the big inflection point in this game was what, 2 turns ago when he decided, I'm not going to play the Supreme Verdict, even though I know my opponent has Swan Song mana open. I'm not going to play the Supreme Verdict to clean these up. I'm going to go slower. I'm going to risk taking some hits, and I'm going to play Flage, and I'm going to try to wait out this new saga that appeared. And it resulted in taking some hits, but that's where the Lightning Helix half of Flage comes in so handy, right? Not only did it remove creatures, it gave you some incidental life gain. So now you're still hanging in there at 5 life, and you're going to get an opportunity to clean up the board.
Yeah. Now, I mean, if we look past the turn, if we look past the verdict turn, right? What does this
Right.
game look like for Andrew a couple of turns from now? The verdict's going to happen. Counterspell's going to be held up. Andrew's leftovers still has some stuff, right? Still has the endurance, still has Teferi, Court of Calling, so is not out of gas, and the Swan Song as well. So, and I still believe he has an Antuco. So, Andrew still has some stuff going on, but it's going to be interesting to see how Andrew decides to sequence his threats post Wrath. Also, excuse me, keep in mind we do have the Shifting Woodland available. Now, I
Right.
can't get a good look at the graveyard below that number one. I don't know if there's a Nadu in there. I would assume there isn't because we probably would have tried to go towards that at some point with the Shuko in play, or maybe there's no Delirium. It's hard to tell, but that is an option as well. Not exactly sure what you would want to copy though.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I see artifact enchantment land. So assuming there's a creature, which there has to be, there is delirium. I think the problem is there's probably no Nadu in as far as the woodland goes, or at least it hasn't been a thing that's come up yet. But Charles is really thinking this through, recognizes that, hey, I actually, against Nadu in the finals of this tournament, have a chance to finish this thing off and defeat it. I have the cards that I think can get me there. Supreme Verdict plays through Swan Song,
Yeah, here it
and
is.
that
There's the
will,
verdict.
yeah,
And,
and
Charles still gets to hold up counterspell for whatever the first follow up is. And Andrew just kind of shrugs the shoulders. This is going to happen. And then it's really going to be a question of what does Andrew want to follow up with. So yeah, Wrath is going to happen. Shuko, couple of lands. Notably for Andrew, only 4 mana, so doesn't really have the ability to double spell to play through a counter spell. You could maybe like if Andrew draws a land, you could bait with Teferi and then follow up with the Springheart Nantuko. As I say that, it was a Dryad Arbor, which you cannot tap for mana the turn you play it. So it needed to be a different land.
yeah, that's how it always goes. Cast or curse, right? You called it, but not quite.
Could
Anyway,
also
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, oh, actually, we can't. I was gonna say Teferi with Swan Song backup, but we
Right.
have blue, white, blue, green, and then 2 green sources, so can't even go Teferi with Swan Song backup. You could just pass, maybe play the Dryad Arbor, pass, hold up the Endurance plus counter spell, or Endurance and or counter spell. So yeah, this is a
Well,
tricky spot here for Andrew.
yeah, Charles is at 2 life, so anything that involves like most games of Magic comes down to the mana. That's why decks like Tron or Eldrazi or such are so powerful abstractly, is because of how much mana they're able to spend over the course of a game. So if you think about this game and the position we're in, the counterspell in Charles's hand is so strong because if Andrew can't spend that 4 mana on 2 different spells, then his entire turn is going to get time walked by the existence of the counterspell. So if Andrew is recognizing that and wants to play around it, passing the turn back makes that 2 mana go to waste on Charles's end. But then on Charles's end step, you're able to attempt an endurance with counterspell backup, which would give you an attacker when Charles is at just 5 life. So these are all the considerations going through Andrew's head. And it looks like instead we're actually just going to play the endurance main phase, and it does in fact run into a counter spell. And now Andrew faces the choice, asking his teammates, "Do I swan song this? Do we fight over the main phase endurance?" The answer is yes.
All
So the end
right.
result is endurance for Andrew and a 2-2 Andrew for Charles as well.
Yeah, well, it's actually funny because Charles had 5 life, the endurance plus the Shuko only 4
That's
damage,
right.
so not quite enough to finish the job here for Charles. So we might get into a spot where okay, so you equip the Shuko, maybe you want to oh, you're right, the endurance resolve, we can't even go towards the Flage now. So I
Yeah.
think there was a second copy of Flage in hand for Charles though, so that could maybe at least start there. But with the
The
endurance
ring,
having
maybe?
4 toughness, not
Yeah.
quite enough, right?
Yeah, I don't think that gets there. I do spot the ring. This is obviously a key one, but at 5 life, it's not riskless for Charles. Can't spot. Was that enough? I think we hit another. Can't tell if that's a land or not. I
I
guess
don't know
not.
what that card was. I think it was a white card, but I
It
couldn't
was,
quite get a
yeah.
good look at it.
Okay, well, here we go. The game continues. Protection from everything from Charles, which, as we have covered before, does not actually stop you from getting Nadu comboed, but the counterspell in his hand might. The Swan Song has now been burned. In fact, you have a bird.
What do we got here? Looks like a forest to fairy. I think there was another copy of Swan Song 2 in hand for Andrew. So maybe you could go like cast to fairy, get that counter spelled. Then I guess maybe you want to go towards the Springhorn Antuco first. Maybe that baits the counter spell here for Charles. And then if the counter spell happens for Charles, then you can go to fairy bounce the token, which will clear the blocker for next turn, hypothetically. So let's see how Andrew wants to sequence this. I think we're leading with Teferi, which almost certainly has to meet a counter spell because if you don't counter this, then your counter spell is kind of shut off anyways. Yeah, and Andrew's aware of that. So it's really a question of where do you want to go from here? I think we're just going to go. I would guess basic forest bestow onto endurance.
This is where we talked about how powerful it is to be able to double spell through the counter spell. Because Charles was able to navigate to the turn he wanted, the one ring plus counter spell backup, and answer the first thing Andrew does. But you're not able to answer the second thing Andrew does, which is you called it bestow the Nantuko onto the endurance. All right, Charles, this is a big window, though. You are going to go down to 4 off of the one ring, but you've got Andrew tapped out. You've got a lot of his cards there in play. If you can find maybe a Wrath of the Skies to get going, some stuff to get things rolling, you might be able to get there. Now, we saw some people said they thought it might have been a prismatic ending that we caught last turn,
Mhm.
which is an interesting possibility to consider. Charles also considering whether he wants to tap the one ring to draw 2 cards, which would, of course, change that clock, even if you answer or chump the endurance down to 2 turns instead of 4 turns, which is a massive difference. But decides the risk is worth it. We're tapping the one ring. We hit 2 cards, settle to Otawara.
Those are not too bad. The Otawara, at the very least, can remove the endurance for a turn. So that could at least buy you a little bit of time. Don't forget about the Manamo, too. The Manamo can untap the ring to get a little bit deeper. Now, with Charles on 4 life, that is a bit of a sketchy proposition. So, yeah, I mean, I guess you could go prismatic ending.
You can
You can
Otawara
also
the one ring.
yeah, you could do that. I thought there was a second Phlegon in hand, but maybe I'm just misremembering. I
I
could
think
have
it was
sworn Charles
played.
had a
I think there were 2
okay.
played, and then they both got endurance
Oh, right.
away.
Charles played the second one the turn before the verdict. Okay, yep. So doesn't have access to that. You could pending the endurance, or no, I guess at that point maybe you would pending the spring hard and hold up the Otawara to maybe bounce the endurance. Not exactly sure. There's a lot of options here for Charles. I can't tell. That is that a solitude?
I do think there has been a solitude floating around perhaps for a minute, but here we go. Prismatic ending on the Shuko. Otawara is only discounted, by the way, for legendary creatures, so the ring does not discount it. It's 4 mana to bounce with
Right.
Otawara right now, which, by the way, Charles has up right now Minamo and Bounce with Otawara. So this is actually a very good spot for him. The thing he's got to contend with is that Andrew has access to, an amount of mana and Court of Calling, right? So any kind of land drop for him turns on a lot of things here. For instance, it looks like I think we have that Dryad Arbor floating around in hand. So there we go. The Court of Calling start to become very threatening now. And that means Charles has a lot of choices he will have to make over the next turn cycle here. This is big.
Yeah, there's still that swan song left over here for Andrew. So Andrew could maybe even go
He does.
Cord.
He has. Does he
Yeah,
have another one?
I
We've
think I
went through
saw.
one already, right?
I
So
think I saw another one. It
wow.
was a
So a
blue
second
card
one.
for
Yeah,
sure.
that would be
I think
huge for him.
I think the hand right now is Stormdrake, Court of Calling, and Swan Song is what we're looking at. Okay, so we're gonna play a land. That's gonna make a copy of the Endurance. And then we still have access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can cord for 2 with the Swan Song up. So
Yeah, it
that
is.
is an
Yeah,
option available. May just want to save the cord for next turn to cord for Nadu with the Swan Song available, because I think that is maybe where Andrew's head where Andrew's head is at, or where he wants to go towards. Yeah, we see Endurance attack that's going to meet a chump block. And, like you mentioned, the Minamo can untap the One Ring. Maybe it's a situation where you go Minamo, untap the One Ring, draw 3, still end of turn, bounce my own ring because you do
that's
have
what he
6
wants to
mana.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, and then untap, replay the ring, gain protection for a turn, draw some more cards, and then try to,
The
go
the
from there.
the problem is that the Court of Calling specifically messes up Charles if he does opt to just fully tap out on the instep here. I guess you can start by untapping the ring and drawing 3 if you really want, but no matter how you cut it, it's a tough decision because you are going to go shields down a little bit. Now, we know Andrew has Court of Calling in hand. We know he has Swan Song in hand. What Charles doesn't know is if the unknown cards in Andrew's hand actually kill him here if he goes for this. But I'm not sure he's going to have any choice but to actually just make this play and hope that things work out.
Yeah, the other thing that's worth mentioning here is that Ellen Bogan's deck list. I mean, I'm taking a look right now. I'm trying to get a count of how many total copies of Haywire Might there is. There is 2 copies. Okay, so one in the graveyard still has one to be able to search for. And yeah, that looks like what's going to happen here. Cord, I believe, is going to be X equals
I
1. I
think it's
didn't quite get
two,
the count.
one,
2,
maybe
okay.
one.
I didn't quite get the exact count.
Yeah, one
Okay.
for might, which
But
allows you
there's
to pop. Yeah.
there's no green left over, right? Am I missing something?
Oh, I think you might be right.
The
We
only
were able to
untapped
get the
land is
might,
the
but not do
Meticulous
anything with
Archive.
it.
And I think
If that
Andrew
is,
maybe just realizing that.
yeah, I was thinking that was a hedge maze on the end there, but it's not, is it? So okay, in that case, the One Ring does in fact untap, and then it taps to draw 3, which is 1, 2. Wow, 3 lands is what it was for Charles.
Not
So
the
I guess
best.
it just has to be Otawara bounce the ring now.
Yeah. Yep, and that's going to happen. Otawara is going to pick up the ring, Andrew with a shake of the head, and then the ring is going to be recast next turn to give Charles a little bit of reprieve, as we see, I think it was, a
Surgical.
surgical extraction, which not where you want to be here.
No, I guess you probably just have to play the ring and get protection here.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Charles drew 3 lands off of that One Ring, so I'm not even sure that does Charles even have a piece of interaction to hold up on Andrew's turn? I guess there's
I
what I
see a
think there's a
spell
spell
snare and a
snare and a
subtlety, I
subtlety.
believe. Yeah. Plus
Yeah,
whatever if he wants to dig one deeper. Of course, with the ring, he'll be able to. Don't think we'll be paying 2 life for that extraction anytime soon, but may end up a situation where he has to. I guess the good news is he's worked his way through the Court of Calling now after finally is starting to run Ellen Bogan down on cards. This is, by the way, if you are just dropping in here, this is all of it for the entire tournament. This match right here, this game between Andrew Ellenbogen and
oh,
Charles Dusterberg, and we are deep into things here. Path of the Sky
Corbin,
sighting.
Yeah, Corbin, that was a heck of a top deck. Wrath of the Skies peeled off the top here for Charles. Now, we still do know about the Swan Song in hand for Andrew. So Charles doesn't necessarily know about that. We could play maybe a White Source. And yeah, we're going to take a look at the graveyard. I don't believe there is, I'm pretty sure there's no copy of Nadu. I imagine that would have come up before.
Yeah, no
So yeah, no
copies of
Nadu in
Nadu.
the graveyard. Not really a ton to copy here with the shifting woodlands. We saw last game how Andrew was able to copy the Urza saga and kind of get a little bit of value that way, but I don't think we're in a position, or we don't really have a ton of time to do anything past that. So very interesting to see exactly what Charles is going to do here.
Plays a fetch, and so you could play. This is a really interesting spot for Charles to navigate. I would not have this tournament end any other way. We were getting our money's worth right here. Passes the turn.
Yeah, so land played here for Charles. Take a look and see how Andrew wants to go here. Remember, protection for a turn. And yeah, this is interesting. So I'm trying to think of what the shifting woodland can even copy here. I guess well, I mean, you already have the Haywire Mite in place. You don't really need to copy the Haywire Mite. Looks like a Boseiju was found off the top.
Andrew Ellenbogen, Pro Tour champion, deep in the tank here as he tries to pilot Bant Nadu to a win in what could be its last weekend. And I think he's passing the turn back to Charles. And we're in the instep. I could be wrong, but it looked like that might be what's occurring. Of course, the
Yeah.
One Ring giving Charles protection, so Andrew can't do anything with attacking here.
And I think Charles is thinking about untapping the One Ring. Is that where we're going? We're at least thinking about it. Doesn't even okay.
Okay.
Doesn't crack the fetch.
Doesn't do it. Doesn't crack the
Yep.
fetch. Values every point of life because you only got 3 of them left now. I think Discharge was a very good draw there.
What's funny about this is okay, so let's say that Charles goes to activate the One Ring and then Haywire Mite in response. Then Charles could maybe use the Manamo in response to that to untap the ring and activate it again. This is,
He might have what he needs now, right? He might be able
yeah.
to. Or are we able to wrath the board now with access to Discharge and all this mana?
So maybe you go. Yeah, that's a good point. Discharge can take
One
care of the
red.
Haywire. We're targeting the Haywire Mite. This is interesting. So I think what Charles is saying is that okay, if you want to fight over the One Ring, I can respond, activate, untap with Manamo, get more cards that way, or maybe not untap with Manamo, but at least get cards out of the One Ring trigger. So
Right.
yeah, this is interesting to see exactly what Andrew wants to do. Now, the issue with targeting the Haywire Mite is if it gets sacrificed, you don't actually get the energy off of it.
Oh, that could be problematic. Okay. That's a good
Yeah,
note. Well,
so
Ellenbogen thinking it through because there's a lot riding on this. He also, by the way, I think that might be both Seiju pulled to the front of his hand. He might have, I don't know what he'd be thinking about doing with it here, but okay, here we go. We're gonna tap the Dryad Arbor, tap a land,
hmm.
untap a Dryad Arbor, untap a land.
I wonder if Andrew is now thinking about Boseiju on the Minamo in response to then get Charles to use the ring, then Haywire Mite in response. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what's happening. So
Yep.
this is going to be a heck of a stack here.
Yeah, tries to figure out what are we gonna do with the extra copy of this Boseiju in my hand. I guess this makes things more interesting. And if you're Charles, you basically need to decide how much do I want more cards, or is that okay? I think this is the correct decision. Just say, okay, fair enough. I'll let that happen. We'll go from here. I have a lot of cards in hand, and I think if you're Charles, you might be able to get there. If you could find one more board wipe, you feel very good about your position here. If you're Charles and you're just trying to navigate the game to that position.
Yeah, and I believe Charles did float a mana here. So 1 mana floating, Wrath of the Skies. So if you Wrath for 3, everything goes away. And I mean, I think it really just comes down to can Charles find a Flage to gain enough life before the One Ring goes? Because I almost wonder. with Charles at 3, right? If you're an Ellenbogen seat with the Haywire Might, do you even kill the One Ring, or do you just leave it in play, hoping that that's your win condition? We are going to go after it. Okay. Interesting decision.
Land dress down.
Yeah, I guess maybe you figure that if Charles has something like a Teferi or another copy of the One Ring, then leaving it in play is, or
Yeah.
it makes sense, right?
That play, I mean, Andrew maybe was hoping towards that before, but once you witness your opponent Otawara bouncing their own ring to start looping
Yeah.
it, maybe it's just time to cut the shenanigans and get rid of it if you can.
Yeah, we're taking a look at this graveyard here because don't forget that shifting woodland's still in play for Andrew. There's, a plenty of good options here. Could go for the Haywire Mike, could go for the Urza Saga, and now if you are in Charles' seat, likely going to fire off this Wrath of the Skies, and then we will have to see exactly where we go from there.
Is that a surgical?
Oh,
Are we
Charles going
going
to
to
go to
surgical
1?
the swan song?
No way.
Please.
Oh my goodness.
Soul read.
This would be the sickest read of all time. Please tell me.
He's been holding up Swan Song the entire game and has already played it once. You know that there are 2 in the list, and it is in the hand. I don't have confirmation that's what Surgical is targeting, but I guess we're going to find out.
Oh my
It
god,
was!
he targeted the Swan Song. Oh my goodness. And now we were going to get the second Swan Song out of the hand, and that means the Wrath of the Skies is going to resolve. That is insane.
Surgical chat says Surgical hit Charlie. Charles, what a read, protecting yourself
actually
from
did
that so you can resolve this Wrath of the Skies.
What a read. I mean, it makes sense because Andrew, there were definitely spots where Andrew was holding up 1 mana for quite a while, and I think that was a really good read here for Charles. And
wow,
we
what
are
a
going to fire it
play.
off. Yep.
And here comes the Wrath. This is some play worthy of the finals of our championship here, the NRG series in Madison. Team Trios, we played all weekend for this. Wrath of the Skies resolves for Charles. And now we said he needed 1 more. That
Wait a minute.
might be the corner officially turned for Charles Dusserberg and his team.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Corbin, but shifting Woodland on Endurance. Talk to me. Do we have a way out? Do we have a way to stop that? I don't know if we do.
Dress down. Does dress down get us out of it?
I don't know. That doesn't work because I think it would still be a 3/4. It would remove the abilities, but it would still be a 3/4.
Are there 3 green sources? There are. Or 2 green sources to activate and do it. There's enough. There's plenty. Yeah, so there are that. It's looking like it is possible here. It was a corner turned, but if that play was there, it's at least not something they've gone to yet. We look like maybe we're talking about Sylvan Safekeeper over there in the graveyard is Ellenbogen. I think he might be looking through what you're thinking about.
And I think there's a solitude. I think there's a solitude in hand here for Charles.
Ooh, their white card.
I think we announced the Sylvan Safekeeper. Interesting. So that's safer if you expect him to have a removal spell. And honestly, the plan. I was gonna say the plan might just be to copy the Safekeeper a couple of times. Oh my goodness. Oh no, layers. I don't know how this works. So I think what's happening here is shifting Woodland, copy the Sylvan Safekeeper, which was smart for Andrew playing around a removal spell. Now the question is, if Dress Down is cast, right? Now, say Ellenbogen responds and gives the shifting Woodland, who is a Safekeeper, Shroud. Would it still have Shroud after the Dress Down resolves? I'm guessing no.
No, is my belief.
Oh, and now if he has, so I think, like you said, there is a subtlety and a solitude in hand. So with the dress down in play, if you now solitude or subtlety, because of the dress down, you don't have to evoke the elemental.
He hit Flage.
Yeah. So now you can go subtlety, pitch the spell snare, 3/3 to block the Woodland. Next turn, Flage, and then go from there. What an insane turn! Oh my goodness.
I thought for sure we were just going to copy the Endurance and go for it there, But no, and I don't know if hitting that flage mattered because it unlocked solitude or not, but it's certainly the life gain that's going to matter. Dress down, absolutely huge right there for Charles Dusterberg.
My goodness. And yeah, you called it too, the flage off the top and a counter spell picked up for Charles. I mean, we thought that Andrew was in a commanding position most of this game, and it just Charles has played this game phenomenally. It's actually I cannot believe how well Charles has played this game to maneuver into this position. Yeah, wild game. This again, this might be the last time we see Nanu on camera
That's right.
for its entire lifespan, and these players are giving us our money's worth for sure.
That is for sure. And Charles Dusterberg might be able to send Nadu off on an L. Blage comes in, goes face. That gets Charles out of the danger zone, back up to 6 life. And you said it. I mean, no, now we're talking solitude. Now we're talking counter spell. Like that was it. That was the last board that Andrew was really able to assemble through all of the wraths, through all of the removal, through all of the flage triggers. That was it. And I don't think at this point, I mean, we will see, but 3 cards in hand only for Ellenbogen. It feels like Charles he's got this game in his hands. It is his to lose right now. Although I guess we'll check on life totals, but we still have him at 4 at the moment here.
Yep, and Andrew just picking up a land. Now, there is, I guess, a consideration where Andrew with the Volatile Stormdrake maybe could let Charles go for the Flage, but again, we know there's a counterspell there. I want to
Right.
go back to that turn where Surgical Extraction on
Yeah.
Swan Song. Like I cannot believe that Charles found that line. And I mean, looking at the deck list, Charles recognized the board state.
Yeah.
Again, what we want to mention is that these players have full deck lists, right? And Charles was well aware that the only other counterspell in Ellenbogen's deck list was that second copy of Swan Song, and just incredibly heads up play. Looks like we found another copy of Surgical, as yeah, the counterspell in Charles's hand, and I think this might be it, Corbin.
Yeah, I think we are nearing the end here. Charles Dusterberg, really masterful. We saw Garrick Alford try to do it yesterday with Jeskai against Nadu in the finals. Wasn't quite able to do it, but it looks like the second time around on camera here, we might get to see a different outcome. Bant Nadu, the terror of modern on your left in the hands of Pro Tour winner Andrew Ellenbogen. But Charles Dusterberg and Jessica Control have navigated one of the tightest games of Magic I've seen in quite some time. Had an incredible read with that surgical. And here we are. The attacks have begun. It is just lethal next turn, right? Between Flage and the subtlety. Now that will lead Andrew to
Yeah,
try to
but
act.
we know there's a
Right?
counterspell.
Yeah.
So presumably counterspell is going to take care of the Stormdrake. I wonder if Charles is thinking, is there anything else that Andrew could have here? If I counterspell this Stormdrake, is there any way for Andrew to get out of this? And I think the answer is no. And I think we're going to see I guess we can surgical first to check the hand, just to
Sure.
double check and make sure that Andrew doesn't have any funny business going on over there. And what are we targeting? We're targeting Teferi Time Raveler. Makes sense. Cord and a halfling, and that I think that's going to do it, because the counter spell is going to take care of the Stormdrake. Andrew can play the halfling. We're going to attack with both creatures, kill the halfling. Oh, that's only 9. So
That's 9.
Andrew's
Yeah.
going to go to 1. I think we may have one more turn.
Counter spell. You could solitude the halfling.
So Solitude, the halfling puts Andrew to 11, and then it's 12. Yeah, that's a good point. You could just Solitude and then, yep, okay.
So here we go. This might be it. Charles Dusterberg sees the card, knows the board,
Yeah,
draws
that
another
works
Flage,
too.
double check with his teammates that he had it. Flage your half lane. And then we will be swinging for lethal. Andrew Allen doing one last check of his graveyard. There's nothing there. There's the swing. There's the cards. And I think that is it. It is picked up. That's the handshake. Congratulations, Charles, Frederick, and Kamari. You are the winners of the NRG Team Trios Championship Series here in Madison. What a match. What a team. What an ending.
I mean, we've been doing this all weekend long, and I've been having a great time. And I would not have it any other way than that last match. I mean, that last game of the tournament had everything. That is going
Did.
to be 100% on the best of NRG series. You better believe it. And I mean, it had everything, right? The soul read on the swan song from the surgical extraction. There was the
Mhm.
time where Andrew had the chord of calling, maybe tapped a little bit in just kind of arena auto tapped it way out of that with that didn't hold up the haywire mic, but I mean that game just had it all, and you wouldn't have it any other way. And this is kind of the big story of the tournament. Is
Yeah.
Jeskai will Jeskai be able to take down Nadu? And Jeskai got the last word, huh?
Well, if this is the end of Nadu, it's interesting. It did get the last word. However, uh, we're scoring it on the weekend. It's 1-1 in the finals of these NRG series events. So it might be an incomplete when the report card comes out tomorrow. But regardless, look, we all know what this was. It was probably the end of the final big weekend for that deck. And it was something to watch as we did. And as these players took it down in the end. So I think we're going to try to get in with an interview with our winning team because as a reminder, they win the team trios event. Not only do they win, this is a 10K event, but they are now qualified for the NRG championship at the end of the year. That's what everyone tries to play for, and they are finding themselves there after this victory. I think we're going to try to head down to the booth if our champions are ready.
I am.
Hello.
Hi.
Congratulations, you guys. That was an incredible match, an incredible ending. Talk us through those last couple of moments against Nadu. Everyone knows what Nadu is. You're playing against it in the hypest match possible. Tell us about those last few moments.
Yeah, so those last few turns when I was dying to my own lane and I was trying to find exactly how to survive, and I give the credit to my teammates. They read very well that my opponent likely had a swan song where I got just my head.
The teammate that knows what modern cards do.
Yeah, and they got to have they found the surgicals on swan song line, which let me resolve them at this guy, which was very important. And I wasn't sure how he would react to me discharging the hard line, and it would have been interesting if he had just let it resolve, because I don't know how. I didn't have another lane in my hand where I already used my hard card, so it was really close.
Yeah, it was a wild ending, and we noted for sure that Swan song, right? That was an incredible moment.
Crazy line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did read that there was a swan song in hand. There's no way I would be able to pilot Jeskai to the position that Charlie did, where surgically swan song does win the game. I chose him because he's like the best control player I know.
Yeah,
I wanted control.
Truly credit to Charlie.
Yeah.
Like, insane line.
He's only dropped one game to Nadu all day today and faced.
Wow.
Did you face anything but Nadu?
7 of my 9 matches were against him.
Yeah, so high percentage was against Nadu, a card that don't know if we'll see tomorrow, but hey.
Hopefully the last day.
Right, with how he's performing, maybe we should leave it in the format.
Maybe it's fine.
I'm kidding, guys. But you might have noticed I lost all 3 of my top 8 games, so most of my credit goes to my teammates just like dragging me up to
We
the
still
top.
love you. We still love you. It's
Yeah,
all
of
it's
course,
all
of
love.
course.
My rescan matchup was positive before this, I promise. I could not win a game to save my life on camera against rescan.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to ask about the standard. So,
Yeah.
Frederick, talk to me about the standard deck, because we've seen a ton of Golgari. I mean, it was probably the most
Oh,
played
for
deck
sure.
over the course of the tournament.
Yeah.
But your specific list didn't actually contain the combo. Talk to me about, it had more virtues and less of the Vraska Innkeeper's talent. So, what was the decision behind behind that?
Yeah, so I didn't go any Vraska Innkeeper's talent. I don't like that pushes your whole game plan into the late game, right? It makes the mirror a lot worse. It's a lot easier to sideboard for, and I know because I played one of the matchups where my opponent was on the Vraska variant, and he told me that the strength of it is that you can board into basically the default version of the deck. I really like 2016 Jund. And 2016 Jund didn't have any oops I win
Me
buttons.
too.
You just had to minus your lilies, get your blood braids, just fundamentals. And I went undefeated today personally. So I was pretty stoked. I think I made the right call. I love green black mid range. I love all the variation, all the experimentation that's happening within that deck by its sort of dedicated players. So I'm really happy I could push it to the top of the championship. And credit to my teammates for giving me the assist. Mostly helping me mulligan because mulligans are really tough with like mid range decks. And I also, the one other thing I want to mention about my deck is I'm super high on Virtue of Persistence in the main. I played a playset in the main today, which surprised everyone who read my deck list in the top 8, right? But with green-red, aggro so prevalent, with mono-red so prevalent, like it really does, really does put in the work. So yeah, for Virtue in the main, I'm very, very into.
Well, it was a great weekend all around for you all. Congratulations again. By the way, this qualifies you for quite a bit if you didn't know. So, what is next for you all? We're going to see you. We've got more of these events coming up that you will now be able to show up and say, "Hey, that's a Showdown winner I've playing against."
Yeah, Showdown winner and 4-time Pro Tour viewer.
Very much please do not face me in another format. I cannot guarantee you that I'm in a top 8 with another format. Like the only top 8s this year, my only top 8s ever in the Energy, I've been playing Painter in a Legacy event. So that's the only deck I can play, I think.
Yeah, and I hope it's all the championships from now on are standard because I don't want to read any Universes Beyond cards.
I think we can all agree on
Good
that.
answer.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
And I got one more question. So, for those of you who don't know, the winner of our showdown, including the team, they get a token of their own likeness from Inkling Customs. Have you guys put any thought to whatsoever into what the token you guys want to represent yourself?
We have thought about it for sure.
Okay.
We've argued. I want a fish token because I love Fountain Port with 3 realistic human heads on it, but it's not my call.
Well, all I used.
You know what? You were the one who clinched it. Energy token, right?
Yeah, I was
We
about to
already
say
have
the
an
only
energy token.
my deck produces. I'm pretty sure 0 tokens. So
I don't know.
nothing that
Produced
got me
some
here
swans in that
has-
game.
Yeah, I did have some swans in play, but I didn't make them. So
I mean, I personally want a painter color token so that I know what color my painter is on with all the rest everything in front of the colors, but that's my
It's
personal
also 5
vote.
tokens.
No, it would be one with like a strip of each color that you can
And
put a
you'd
die
like
on.
put the
You
die
can
on.
put
pretty
the
That's
die
that's
across.
Yeah,
inventive.
that would be
have
nice.
us in front
I'm
of
on
it.
board. I'm on board.
yeah, we need.
Yeah,
two
I
more
like the
people.
creativity you all are at here.
Pillars
Everyone's,
behind
I'll
it.
just have an elf or, no, you all are in energy
Yeah.
tokens. We're going to go with the painters tokens. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? You all deserve it because you are Showdown winners. So, Frederick, Charles, Kamari, congratulations again on your victory.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and of course, we want to thank everyone at home for hanging out with us. Corbin Hostler, Devin Dumwake O'Donnell in the booth with you. We have brought it to you today. In fact, Devin, you've been here all day. You got to see some amazing magic.
Yeah, it's been a long day, Corbin. Here since about 12 hours now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I love commentating, and I love getting to watch these matches, and just do it with everybody. And it was a ton of fun. I had a great time, and just that last match. I'm never going to forget that last game with the surgical read on the Swan Song and the Haywire Might, and just everything about that. The Boseiju on the Minamo, just everything about that game was exactly why we play Magic. So I wouldn't have it any other way.
Absolutely. And we want to thank all of you, of course, for joining us here on the Twitch stream. It was a lot of fun all weekend. Remember, you can smash that follow button. You can subscribe if you'd like. We appreciate the support. We love being able to bring you live tabletop Magic. There's truly nothing like it. And the support for the channel, of course, helps make that possible, as does going out to an NRG event near you. So before we get out of here, I think we can take a look perhaps at the events coming up, because there is not just this weekend and there's not just the championship NRG event at the end of the year. We have more showdowns coming to you, starting with Louisville, September 14th and the 15th. You can play what will probably be a refreshed Modern format. You can come for a 10K Modern Showdown on Saturday, all the side events you want, or you can play some of the new Standard we just saw, which looked honestly pretty fun with a lot of different archetypes, in a 5K trial on Sunday. That is September 14th and 15th in Louisville. And coming up after that, we will head to Indianapolis. November 2nd and 3rd, same thing modern on Saturday, 10K Showdown, followed by this time a 5K Pioneer Showdown on Sunday. These events all you can earn points for the end of the year championship, but even if you don't, you can have a great time that weekend out there with your friends. So look for us in Louisville and Indianapolis coming up. And I think that will do it for us. Devin, thanks again for hanging out. This has been a great weekend. Thank you, all of you, for watching the NRG Championship Series. Signing off for Madison. We'll see you next time.